Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Almost Fiction Aftershow. Today, the episode is going to be in regards to the Ramon Jay Rogers episode, which should have dropped not too long ago. And here we are to go over my thoughts and opinions on it, because that's what this show is about. Just my thoughts, my opinions, and if you don't want to hear them, the best part is you don't have to. I usually try to keep the show just the show with the facts of the case and nothing more. So, here at the After Show, it's an uncut, unscripted. I have a couple notes here, but other than that, it's just me giving you my opinions on the case. So, Ramon Jay Rogers. Now, you've already listened to the case, but I just wanted to talk about how one of the interesting things about this case is when Ramon was given up for adoption by his biological parents who couldn't afford him, which, happens, I think, more often than we'd like to admit. So Ramon's given up for adoption, but luckily some family friends find out about it, and they step in, say, hey, we'll take care of him. We're going to let him know he's your kid. We have the means to do it. So we're going to do it. So that was really awesome of the Rogers family to do that, because that's not his original last name. So awesome that they stepped in, raised Ramon as their own, but also he knew his parents. He knew who they were. There was family parties all the time. They were literally part of the family. So he grew up in this, large family now. And one of the problems is if you haven't ever been to Idaho, it's kind of hard to explain how white Idaho is, and not because of snow. But it must have been different for Ramon because his dad was white, but his mom was from Trinidad. I want to say Trinidad. I can't. She's from Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, that's where she's from. And so Ramon grows up half black in Idaho. So he's probably one of very few African American students in his high school. I know I grew up in Utah, southern Utah. We had one African American family in my whole entire school. So, and Idaho's, people who lived in Utah like to call Idaho our little brother. They are very similar in cultures. They're very similar in just about everything. If you can think about it, they're pretty similar. Just the way, topography even, to makeup. The LDS Church, very prominent in both states. And so he grew up different than a lot of the other kids that he went to school with, which couldn't be easy. But he seemed to do well with it. I mean, it said he had multiple jobs that he held. People trusted him. His teammates on the sports teams he played on loved him. Anyone who knew him or his family, they liked the kid. He was just a good kid, didn't have any problems with the law, went to school, did all his homework, did everything, did his chores around the house. Just, your stereotypical middle-class kid growing up. Afterwards, he decides to join the military, decides to go into the Navy. There's a lot of good programs in the Navy, academics-wise. I actually know a few people I know a nuclear physicist, not a nuclear physicist, but a nuclear engineer who learned it in the Navy. I know some people who went into the Navy and did medical programs. They're now orthodontists or doctors or things of that nature. So there's a lot of people who use the Navy for almost academic things, but that wasn't necessarily the case with Ramon. So he did his 4-year enlistment in the Navy and then decided not to re-up, decided to get out. During that time, he met Ron his best friend. They decide, hey, we're going to move in with each other. Like, we're going to start our new lives outside of the military. I mean, they're 22, 23 years old. So they decide to get an apartment together, and they go to beautiful San Diego. So if you haven't been to San Diego, it's gorgeous. The weather's gorgeous. Whether you agree with California politics or not, San Diego is actually a pretty cool place. I haven't been there for a long time, so this is my opinion that's 15 years old. But, like, San Diego, there's some pretty nice places in San Diego, and the weather, like I said, is amazing. So, gets out of the military, and this is where I would say things start to go wrong in Ramon's life. It just seems like he kind of downgrades as a person, right? Like, everyone that knew him growing up had the best things to say about him. They loved him. But now there's starting to be kind of problems in his life. Like, with the limited information that's available, like, you don't just turn bad overnight. And so maybe it was being alone. I mean, Ron eventually got married, moved out, had a kid. Ramon had a relationship with Beatrice, a woman from Poland, Taransak, and it was just like, I don't know where it went wrong for him, and maybe he doesn't know where it went wrong for him either. Has a kid with Beatrice, but they don't really stay together. Beatrice decides to go back to Poland, taking their kid, so that would be like really hard, losing your kid. Like, you didn't lose them, but I mean, flying to Poland can't be cheap. So he doesn't get to see his kid as often as he would like. There comes a point where Ron's relationship, kind of like Ramon's, kind of starts going down the crapper, for lack of a better term, even though there's a million better terms. But Ron is having troubles in his relationship. He moves back in with Ramon, and shortly afterwards, they don't get along too well, and there's a reason. It's because Ramon wasn't telling his best friend that he was sleeping with his wife, and it's part of his fault, or part of the blame for their marriage not working is kind of on Ramon's shoulders. So that happens, and Ron finds out about the infidelity and how his wife was cheating on him with his best friend. So he goes, well, she was cheating on me. I have proof of it. I can get proof. And so I'm going to get my kid. I'm going to get sole custody, and I'm going to move on. So that was his plan. He decides that's what he's going to do. He's going to get all his ducks in a row, and then he's going to pull the trigger and start his new life. But before that happens, Ramon gets in the way. So Ramon has never said what he did, how he did it, why he did it. But Ron Stat disappears. And later, like, what's crazy is there's a point where Ramon is talking to Ron's ex, and she said, well, if he is dead, like, because this is after he went missing, well, if he's dead, he's had a lot of dental work, so they'll be able to find out who he is through dental work. And so then Ramon basically makes a comment along the lines of, well, that was probably the one thing that I messed up then, was not destroying his teeth, pretty much. And he said, I'm never going to let that happen again, which, if you're, like, I don't know if Ron's wife had, like, she said she didn't know anything, but, like, why would he talk to her about that unless she knew something? Or it was a slip? I don't know. Like, I can't, that's why I didn't put it in the episode, because it's like, I don't know why they were talking about that. I mean, later at trial, it comes out that, Ramon's talking to his other friends and asking them to kill people for him. So, I mean, which is weird enough, but I don't know. You just have to wonder how much people involved actually knew. So Ron's gone. Ramon did it. I mean, I don't think there's a question about that. Like, the last person Ron was seen with was Ramon, and it was in a tense situation. So I'm not going to spend too much time doing the math for you, but kind of obvious. So Ron's gone. Ramon didn't get caught, and he now kind of has like what he feels like might be a get out of jail free card, which is just make people disappear. So he has this girlfriend. This is after Ron's ex. He was sleeping with her. He gets this other girlfriend. Her name's Rose Albano. She's Filipino. She is a Filipina. But she says that she's pregnant with Ramon's kid. And he doesn't want to take care of another kid. Like, he probably still has PTSD a little bit from having his first kid taken away. So, plus he's been paying, child support. He's supporting Rose and her 2 other kids from other people. They're living with him in his apartment. And he's just like, doesn't want to deal with it. Doesn't want another kid, doesn't want another mouth to feed. He doesn't want to feed these people anymore like he's done. So he basically tells Rose, get an abortion and get out. And I'll even take you to get your abortion. She's like, no, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that. Next thing you know, she's disappeared. And just like with Ron, we have Ramon telling people all sorts of stories. Oh, she ran away with Ron. Oh, she probably was lost in the wilderness. And like just some of the dumbest things. Oh, she went to Mexico to get a job. Or she became a secretary for someone and moved away. And it's just like, he couldn't tell people where, who, what, when, where, or why. But, just the general, this is kind of what happened, I guess. And so he kills Rose. And I think, like, the thing is that he hid Ron so much better than everyone else. And maybe it was, the paranoia of not having done it before. And then later that wears off when he feels like he got away with it. And so he dumps part of Rose's body out by his own sister's home and then calls her and is just like, hey, they found a body out there. And it was Rose, and she hadn't even been found yet. Like, she had been found, but the cops hadn't identified who it was yet, and they hadn't informed anybody, even if they had identified who it was. So that's a big old red flag of he knew about it and who it was before the cops announced it to anybody, including Rose's own family. So he gets away with it again, or at least he feels like he did. He made someone disappear, took care of them. His life is now easier. And so, what's one more time? What's doing it one more time? So he starts to get buddies with his ex again, Beatrice, the mother of his son, Nicholas. And goes out to Warsaw, where she's living currently, and basically convinces her to come back to the States with her son. In fact, he convinces her to let him take their son while she stays behind and gets all her affairs in order. So he gets back, and they're not back very long before Beatrice stops calling her mom, and Beatrice calls her mom at least once a week, So then Beatrice's mother starts calling Ramon, and Ramon's just getting annoyed and telling her she's gone. I don't know what to tell you. She ran off. He plays the same. She must have ran off with Ron. Like, he disappeared too, and she must have just ran off with him and is in Mexico living their best lives. So he tries to play that again, and the mom isn't buying it. Plus, he's like ignoring her, not helping, being short with her, and it's just like that just seems, I'd be sketched out too. So she calls one of her friends. Her friend calls the police. The police file the missing persons report. And next thing you know, there's an officer calling numbers, right? Doing his job, doing what he's supposed to be doing. In fact, the morning he went out to Ramon's place, he found someone else who was missing. He closed a case. And technically, he closed 2 cases that day, if you think about it. So Beatrice is gone. Ramon has his kid. Now he's being investigated. He had been questioned before. Like, I don't know if I said that, but he had been questioned before in prior disappearances because he obviously knew. Excuse me. Yeah, he obviously knew those people. Let me get a drink. It's all uncut. Doesn't matter anyways. So, basically, the cop shows up, doing his job, following up. He had called Ramon. Ramon gave him some weird answers and was being really weird over the phone. So the cop's like, I'm just going to show up. Shows up, but he goes, that dude was weird enough on the phone to where I'm going to call him back up. So he does. He calls in some uniformed officers because he's probably just a detective in a suit and tie driving an unmarked car. Excuse me. So the cop's like, hey, bud, need to talk to you. And, well, first the cop was like, hey, bud, I need to talk to you. Through the door, knock, knock, knock. No one answers. So then he starts asking around about Beatrice, asking neighbors if they'd seen anything, heard anything, suspected anything. It's pointed down to the storage area where Beatrice's mom said she had been locked up before, which is also a weird red flag. So he goes down there. He just wants to look, right? He just wants to see in the room, make sure nobody's in there, and that's it. And I think that if Ramon would have let him, right, just if he would have just been like, hey, I don't have a lot of time, blah, 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 here, just go look. Like, yeah, there was some stuff in there, but, I mean, the thing is that he was acting so sketch that it just kept throwing red flag after red flag after red flag instead of, like, just playing it cool, I guess. But, I mean, let's be honest, it's a good thing he didn't. So, he's not opening the storage room. Like, he shows up in the middle of the detective talking to people. And detective's talking to someone who's actually working on Ramon's secondary vehicle. And Ramon shows up and won't open the storage room. Nobody else has a key. No one. So the cop's like, okay, well, someone said they thought someone was in the storage room, and they seemed like they knew what they were talking about, so I just need to look, and I'm done. Ramon refuses. The detective gets the other officers on the scene. They break down the door. There's really nothing in there. There is some of Beatrice's things. And they're like, well, this is weird. Like, if she ran away, why is her suitcase here? So then the detective goes, oh, there's more locked doors. Yay. So he finally gets those broken down because, once again, Ramon's refusing to help out at all. So the officer gets those doors broken down, and there's blood. And there's tools covered in blood. And there's just blood, right? And that's it. That's all he needed. Pulls everyone out, says, okay, I checked. I checked. I didn't see anybody in there. So the reason and the ability for him to go check the exigent circumstances, if you will, that let him go check, now do not cover him anymore because he was looking for a person and there was not a person in that storage room. So he has to pull out even though he sees things, but he doesn't have to let anyone else in there. So he calls and goes, hey, this is an active crime scene. I need a warrant as a crime scene. Here, I found literal tools covered in blood. So obviously he gets it. Homicide shows up. They go in. They secure the scene. They're doing their job. They start doing their portion, right? So they find Beatrice, parts of her, a lot of her blood, and her fingers in a bucket, and part of her jawbone, as well as loose teeth. So if we remember about Ramon telling Ron's ex that he wasn't going to forget that, he had taken out anything that could be used to identify her easily, which is mainly fingerprints and teeth. Like, DNA is a thing, but not everyone's DNA is in the system. So, is in the process of destroying her identifiers when he gets caught. The way that he had processed Beatrice, for lack of a better term, was the same way that Rose had been processed after she was found and identified. Obviously, they had a connection. She was supposedly pregnant with Ramon's child. They lived together. So, I mean, it's an open and shut case. A thing that I find weird in, like, getting into the trial now is that one of the things, I don't know, it's defense lawyers are supposed to do their job. Their job is to get the best treatment possible for their client. But what bugs me is when it just becomes a big old game and they're just trying to, their only goal is to confuse, right? They're not trying to prove innocence. They're literally just trying to confuse the jury. That's all they're trying to do. At a certain point, they're using, like called $10 words. They're using fancy pants book learning words, and they're using all this terminology that the average lay person isn't familiar with, and they're talking in a very convoluted and proper way that's meant to confuse. So they bring in this doctor, they bring in multiple doctors, the defense does, to look at Ramon. There's nothing wrong with the dude. There's nothing really wrong with the guy. He's just kind of a dick. Like, pardon my French. And so they get this doctor to say, well, I tested him and he doesn't have any characteristics of a serial killer, or he doesn't have all of them. And, like, you're getting paid by tax dollars. You're getting paid to sit there and say, well, I don't think he's a serial killer because he didn't pass the serial killer test. Like, he didn't get all the answers right, basically. Like, he didn't meet all the checkbox of a serial killer, so he can't be one? Like, is that really? And then you're going to sit on a stand and say that because a defense lawyer paid you to do that? Like, that's the thing, is they're getting paid. The defense team is paying them. And Ron was an apartment manager, so I don't think he has a lot of money. So that means the state's paying for it. So the taxpayers, the victim's family, as taxpayers, are paying for this guy to sit on the stand and say, well, he doesn't meet all of the criteria of a serial killer, so I don't know if he is or not. He is. He had body parts underneath his apartment in the storage unit. He's the only person who had access to. All the missing people he knew and had a reason to make them go missing. Okay, not only that, but after Rose went missing, she had recently pulled money out, probably because Ramon told her to, of her retirement account, like emptied it, and then someone made some, repairs to their truck that totaled about the same amount of money. Isn't that how weird how that works? And on top of that, Ramon had gone to his friend and said, here, can you hold my passport, this plane ticket out of the country, this money, my ID? Can you hold my ex's passport? Can you hold all that for me, please? While the cops look at me? It's like, anyways, back to the lawyer, because I went on a tangent. I have no trouble with a lawyer trying to get their client off, but I just don't like when they're trying to make it confusing and muddy the water instead of proving their client's innocence. So it's like, you're still innocent until proven guilty, but what about the victims of the pile of trash you're trying to get off? So it's like you're making a mockery out of their suffering, is what it feels like in some cases. Now, not all defense attorneys are this way, but when it's your only bid is just, well, I'm just going to try to confuse people. Like, do better. Do your job better. Okay? Don't make people have to pay for it. Like, a lot of these people just see, like, oh, I get to bill whatever I want. I get to bring in experts. I get to do all this stuff because the people are paying for it. Not my client. He doesn't care. So, one of the other things they tried to do was get a bunch of people to come testify about how good of a person Ramon was. People who hadn't talked to Ramon in like 15 years. Guess what? There's stuff I did 15 years ago that I'm super embarrassed about. Right? Like, the way I acted, the way I dressed, whatever. Like, we all have, like, think about yourself 15 years ago. There's something that you, like, are glad changed. There's some things you miss, but there's a lot of things you're glad have changed. So it's like people can change. And people can change a lot in 10 or 15 years. And I think it's safe to say that Ramon had changed. So the people saying, well, I knew him when he was 16. It's like, well, a lot of things have happened since then. Like, he was in the middle of puberty. his brain's still fully developing. Like, your brain doesn't develop fully till your mid-20s, so it's like, I'm pretty sure he's different. And he's not such a good guy now. It's like, I'm going to go out on a limb here and pretend that he's innocent for 2 seconds. But it's like, let's pretend he's innocent. Why is he calling people mountain lion food? Like, joking about their disappearance. Why is he joking about getting rid of their teeth better next time? Like, yeah, make that jokes once or twice, but like, he's telling this over and over to people. Basically, yeah, it's, getting away with murder is not as easy as I thought it would be, but apparently I did it. And it's just like, next time I'm gonna break the teeth up more. Okay, not only and not only that, he abuses his girlfriend in front of people. Like, he tried to get her to get an abortion. There's the lady he attacked in his apartment that didn't testify. I'm sure she wasn't the only one either. She's just the one who came out later. Okay? He hid in his ex-girlfriend's closet when she was on vacation, waiting for her to get home. And then assaulted her. Like, he's like, I don't care how many people you tell me that he's a good guy. He's a good guy. He's not. He's not. Okay? Like, trying to force his girlfriend to get an abortion against her will. Like, he's not a good guy. Jury agrees. Found guilty of murder. 2 first-degree murders for Rose and Beatrice. And for Ron, it's second-degree murder, which is understandable because they didn't have the same evidence. They didn't have a body. Like, they didn't have the same stuff. And you could argue that it wasn't a premeditated murder, that maybe it had happened, spur of the moment kind of thing. Regardless, the dude has the sentence of death for his other 2 first-degree murder charges. The Ron charge gets him another 15 to 25 years. But it is California, so his death penalty just means he's going to sit on death row till he dies of old age. They haven't killed a single person in almost 20 years, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon. So he's just going to sit in prison, San Quentin, until he dies. That's it. So, there's not a lot of controversy here, but do want to make a shout out to the cop who was working the missing persons, to that detective. You did your job. You cleared 2 cases in one day, including a really horrific case involving Ramon Jay Rogers. So, I also want to say to all the lawyers out there, I know you're not all the same, okay? Even to the guy who was the defendant of Ramon, I'm sure that you've probably had better ideas since. And you're a pretty good guy. Just don't sue me. I don't have money. Anyways, should be one more episode until before Christmas break. So I hope to see you all back here again before Christmas. Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. Awesome. Happy holidays to you. You're an awesome person. Keep doing what you do. And like and subscribe. I can't believe I'm that kind of person. Like and subscribe. Spanks. But seriously, thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. And thank you for just being here. Appreciate all of you. And I'll see you next time.